Without a doubt, the movie I just watched is the weirdest film of the year in the best possible way. It's called The Substance, and I think it's flown under a lot of people's radar because this hasn't generated nearly as much buzz as it deserves. I only heard about it because during streams, people were telling me I need to go see it. It's an incredible body horror movie. So right away, I went in this with pretty high expectations with all of the glaze it was getting. This shit was getting basted like a Thanksgiving turkey here in compliments. So I had high expectations of this film. I knew nothing about it going in, didn't even know the concept of it. I was blown away. I thought it was extraordinary. It's super self-aware in its campiness. So the concept of the film is a woman who's getting older is really struggling to come to terms with not being like the beauty standard, being the beauty girl, because she was a TV star for the longest time and she was used to everybody just suckling farts out her butt. And as she was getting older, people stopped doing that. Her ratings were starting to drop, and she was really struggling to come to terms with that. So she gets this opportunity to try something called The Substance, which promises to bring a better version of herself forward. Prettier, younger, this and that, the whole kit and caboodle. Now, while this idea has been explored numerous times, the pursuit of perfection, unrealistic beauty standards, and all kinds of things that this movie thematically explores, it has never been tackled in a way that The Substance has done. It is so good. And I really think it's elevated by how self-aware it is. Very clearly, there's a lot of Cronenberg influence on a lot of what you see and a lot of what you experience with this movie, and I love it. It was so refreshing, it was gross, it was yucky, and I'll get into the nitty-gritty of it for sure, but I really do think this was a pretty special film, but not everyone is going to like it. We went with a pretty large group, and I'd say 60% loved it, and the other 40% were repulsed by it. They hated it. Drew was livid. There was steam coming out of his ears. He hated sitting through this movie so much. He wanted to be neuralized by the Men in Black just to get it out of his mind because he thought it was just that trash. And I feel like that's going to be an experience for a lot of people. There are going to be people that can really appreciate it and those that are just going to be super put off by it. I guess another thing worth mentioning that some of the people that hated it pointed out is that probably a good like 20% of this movie is spent naked. So there's a lot of titty and ass and like close up of booby and ass. Like sometimes it came out of nowhere like a jump scare with bang, honkers. And there is a lot of that for sure. I don't think it's like needless nudity or something. When it's there, there's a reason for it, but there is a lot of it there that maybe some people might find to be like excessive, because there were moments where it was like actually like softcore porn to a certain extent, especially because one of the big things is, I'm not going to get into that because I think that's probably too big of a spoiler, but the sexuality of things does play a role in the actual plot of it all. But me personally, I was smiling ear to ear from start to finish like there was someone tickling my armpits. It had me in such a good mood. Like it was so fun. It was silly in all of the right ways and at all of the right moments. It was serious at all of the right moments, and the body horror is so good. Typically when something tries to be body horror in 2024, the modern age, they just do the laziest, cheapest shit ever where it's like CGI blood coming out of orifices and maybe like an eye poke or something. This film, it goes hog wild. It was like watching a live action Meat Canyon film. I thought it was so good. And it also does play around with the blood too. There is like eruptions of blood. There's tons of guts and gore and everything. But that's not the bread and butter. This whole film, from the way it's filmed to what it presents you with for like the monster creature design, is stellar. I love how everything in this film feels like it's under a microscope. So even something as simple as the Hollywood big shot smoking a cigarette, it's super zoomed in on the cigarette and like his pores, and he's like got saliva dripping out of his mouth while he's smoking it. He's eating some prawns and it's like really yucky sounds, like the worst ASMR ever. And you just sit there and witness all the grossness of it. Even when it's not body horror, it's just filmed in a way that just puts you on edge effectively. And I just thought it was great. Now, like I said, a lot of people hype this movie up saying that it's one of the better body horror films and like the best horror movie of the year. And I agree, it is definitely up there. And interestingly enough, there was a sizable chunk of people that thought I'd really appreciate it because it's eerily similar to a concept that I wrote about years ago. I had an idea for a short story that I put a tweet out about like 6 or 7 years ago, and I had even told a piece of that short story on our album, The Evolution of Tears for the Gentle Men, just kind of as like a silly little track. So we put it to music, and it was just like a short summation of the story. And fundamentally, what it was just this dumb dog shit idea I had where a woman achieves immortality through birthing a clone of herself. So she gets to her octogenarian era, she's senile, she's about to buy the farm, but before she dies, she spontaneously gets pregnant and births an exact copy of her younger self with all of her current self's memories. And in the substance, it's actually kind of similar. So when she gets the substance, she collapses, her back splits open, and she spawns a young version of herself. So the big thing is, she is the Matrix, and this new person, this new being, is actually her. You are one, but it is two separate people, the old you and the new you. And the thing is, you have to keep switching bodies every 7 days in order to not have any like bad side effects from it. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but all of this I'm pretty sure is going to be in the trailers because it's the entire premise of the film. Now, if you've got your thinking caps on and you're using all the neurons up here, you're going to start to connect dots that my short story and the substance, they share some similarities. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be knocking on their door with a lawyer with some papers drafted or anything, because obviously my short story did not inspire this in any way, shape, or form, and they are drastically different. But I couldn't help but actually laugh once the birthing of the younger version of herself happened, which was a really good scene, by the way. But I couldn't help but laugh because I immediately drew that connection of, oh, this is like actually my short story that I'm watching right here, this one moment. Because that is fundamentally what I was writing about for it, in a much worse, stupider way. It's done significantly better in this film, but I just thought that was so interesting that it was like even remotely similar at any stage. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not asking for royalties or anything, I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah, I just thought this movie slapped. As I mentioned, I think it is a very self-aware film in a way you don't really see that often. It's campy in the best ways. And let me give you an example. Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid plays this Hollywood guy. He has the television station that our main character was once the star of, and now the younger version of herself is now the star. Of course, no one knows these are the same person or anything. Like, to everyone else, they're two separate people. And he's a huge scumbag. He's a pervert. He's a bad weirdo. He's a degenerate. And Dennis Quaid leans into the idea of like Hollywood sleazeball so well. So, for example, when he's like just traversing the world, he's in these like steel-toed boots. When he like if he was walking down the hallway in any scene, it sounded like Sonny from iRobot jogging. Like, it just sounded like metal clanking against metal every time he made a move. And the way he moved is like Vince McMahon. So he's always doing this. So every time he's walking, he's hitting him with some of this right here. And he, like, his mannerisms are so silly. So like towards the end where he's like, pretty girls should always smile. And then he starts walking away doing this. Like, it's so over the top, but not in a way where I was like, damn, that's cringe. Like, he's doing too much. It was like, that's perfect. Like, that's so good. It had me laughing, which I'm pretty sure was the idea with it. And it's not just him, I just think he was the best shining example of it. They'd introduce characters sometimes, like Fred, and it's just so in your face, but not in a way where it feels dumb. Like, it just feels like, oh, they're in on this being a joke, and it's supposed to be campy. But I will say there were moments where I think they expected the audience to be stupider. So, like, a big reveal, they did a subtle moment where it reveals it, and you're like, oh, I'm picking up on that. I see what they're saying with that. That's what that means. And then, once you have that realization, the movie immediately beats you over the fucking head with a hammer with what it is. They take all the subtlety away with like a flashback or showing you something like, you know, behind the curtain with this is what it is. This is it right here. Showing you, telling you, instead of just having any level of trust in the audience to piece it together themselves with what you've shown them. So that was a little upsetting because that happened a couple of times and I just thought it was unnecessary in a film like this. Like, you set it up well and you had a good execution of like this subtle reveal. I don't think they needed to take the extra like 5 minutes to give you like the monologue, and this is what it means, and this is why I did it, and this is who I am. I just thought that was a little much. But I just thought the film was super good. I love the monsters. When the monster stuff starts happening, again, not getting into spoilers, I thought they crushed it with the design. I thought it looked great. It did a good job of being unsettling and gross. People in the theater were audibly like recoiling, going like, oh no, actually emoting during a film, which I have not heard in so long in a movie theater. So I think it accomplished its goal. And it's the perfect amount of weird. Like, one of the monsters pukes out a whole titty. Like, it actually pukes out a breast, a single boobie. It just plops onto the ground, a disembodied tit. It's like, whoa, wow, that was interesting, I just think The Substance is a pretty special film. I thought they crushed it. I really did. But again, I think there's going to be a ton of people who hate it. This is not a film I think that's for everyone. It is a weird movie, and I think you need to go in there ready to accept that it's like cartoonishly over the top. And once you do accept that, I think you're going to have a ton of fun watching it. So, yeah, that's really about it. So, yeah.